The Necessity of Religion, Part 3. So man has to give up the plane of matter and rise to other spheres to seek a deeper expression of that infinite. In this way, the various ethical laws are being molded, but all have that one central idea: eternal self abnegation. Perfect self annihilation is the ideal of ethics. People are startled if they are asked not to think of their individualities. They seem so very much afraid of losing that what they call their individuality. At the same time, the same men would declare the highest ideals of ethics to be right, never for a moment thinking that the scope, the goal, the idea of all ethics is the destruction and not the building up of the individual. Utilitarian standards cannot explain the ethical relations of men, for in the first place, we cannot derive any ethical laws from consideration of utility. Without the supernatural sanction, as it is called, or the perception of the superconscious, as I prefer to term it, there can be no ethics. Without the struggle towards the infinite, there can be no ideal. Any system that wants to bind men down to the limits of their own societies is not able to find an explanation for the ethical laws of mankind. The utilitarian wants us to give up the struggle after the infinite, the reaching out of the supersensuous as impractical and absurd, and in the same breath asks us to take up ethics and do good to society. Why should we do good? Doing good is a secondary consideration. We must have an ideal. Ethics itself is not the end, but the means to an end. If the end is not there, why should we be ethical? Why should I do good to other men and not injure them? If happiness is the goal of mankind, why should I not make happy myself and others unhappy? What prevents me? In the second place, the basis of utility is too narrow. All the current social forms and methods are derived from society as it exists. But what right has the utilitarian to assume that society is eternal? Society did not exist ages ago, possibly will not exist ages hence. Most probably, it is one of the passing stages through which we are going towards a higher evolution. And any law that is derived from society alone cannot be eternal, cannot cover the whole ground of man's nature. At best, therefore, utilitarian theories can only work under present social conditions. Beyond that, they have no value. But a morality, an ethical code derived from religion and spirituality, has the whole of infinite man for its scope. It takes up the individual, but its relations are to be infinite. And it takes up society also because society is nothing but numbers of these individuals grouped together. And as it applies to the individual and his eternal relations, it must necessarily apply to the whole of society in whatever condition it may be at any given time. Thus, we see that there is always the necessity of spiritual religion for mankind. Man cannot always think of matter, however pleasurable it may be. It has been said that too much attention to things spiritual disturbs our practical relations in the world. As far back as in the days of the Chinese sage Confucius, it was said, "Let us take care of this world, and then when we have finished with this world, we will take care of the other world." It is very well that we should take care of this world, but if too much attention to the spiritual may affect a little our practical relations, too much attention to the so called practical hurts us here and hereafter. It makes us materialistic, for man is not to regard nature as his goal but something higher. Man is man so long as he is struggling to rise above nature, and this nature is both internal and external. Not only does he comprise the laws that govern the particles of matter outside us and in our bodies, but also the most subtle nature within, which is in fact the motive power governing the external. It is good and very grand to conquer external nature, but grander still to conquer our internal nature. It is grand and good to know the laws that govern the stars and planets. It is infinitely grander and better to know the laws that govern the passions, the feelings, the will of mankind. This conquering of the inner man, understanding the secrets of the subtle workings that are within the human mind, and knowing its wonderful secrets belong entirely to religion. Human nature, the ordinary human nature, I mean, wants to big material facts, wants to see big material facts. The ordinary man cannot understand anything that is subtle. Well, has it been said that the masses admire the lions that kills 1,000 lambs, never for a moment thinking that it is death to the lambs, although a momentary triumph for the lion because they find pleasure only in manifestations of physical strength. Thus it is with the ordinary run of mankind. They understand and find pleasure in everything that is external. But in every society there is a section whose pleasures are not in the senses but beyond, and who now and then catches glimpses of something higher than matter and struggle to reach it. And if we read the history of nations between the lines, we shall always find that the rise of a nation comes with an increase in the number of such men, and the fall begins when this pursuit after the infinite, however vain utilitarians may call it, has ceased. That is to say, the mainspring of the strength of every race lies in its spirituality, and the death of that race begins the day that spirituality wanes and materialism gains ground. Thus, apart from the solid facts and truths that we learn from religion, apart from the comforts that we may gain from it, religion as a science, as a study, is the greatest and healthiest exercise that the human mind can have. This pursuit of the infinite, this struggle to grasp the infinite, this effort to get beyond the limitations of the senses, out of matter as it were, and to evolve the spiritual man, this striving day and night to make the infinite one with our beings, this struggle itself is the grandest and most glorious that man can make. Some persons find the greatest pleasure in eating. We have no right to say that they should not. Others find the greatest pleasure in possessing certain things. We have no right to say that they should not. But they also have no right to say no to the man who finds his highest pleasure in spiritual thought. The lower the organization, the greater the pleasure in the senses. Very few men can eat a meal with the same gusto as a dog or a wolf. But all the pleasures of the dog or the wolf have gone, as it were, into the senses. The lower types of humanity in all nations find pleasure in the senses, while the cultured and the educated find it in thought, in philosophy, in arts and sciences. Spirituality is still a higher plane. The subject being infinite, that plane is the highest, and the pleasure there is the highest for those who can appreciate it. So, even on the utilitarian grounds that man is to seek for pleasure, he should cultivate religious thoughts, for it is the highest pleasure that exists. Thus, religion as a study seemed to me to be absolute necessary.